Hello and welcome to the Built to Serve podcast. I'm your host, Mike Favre. I'm here with United States Navy Petty Officer Third Class Casey Page. Casey, how you doing, sir?
Doing great, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. So, Casey and I, we go way back with Performance Contractors. Actually, starting out in the field. Um, I think you were a pipe fitter, and I was a welder. Then you moved up into safety, right?
Yes.
And then I moved up into supervision, and then got into project controls. We've kind of walked the line, should I say? Especially going into the EHS department now, dealing with military workforce and you and HR. So what? Go ahead and tell me a little bit about yourself. What things are like now, and then we'll kind of backtrack, starting out. Your childhood and everything. Go ahead and tell me a little bit about yourself now.
Well, I'm working as a training coordinator for the Mobile region, so I do a lot of foreman development training. I proctor NCCER test, teach CPR and first aid. Anywhere where I can help out in the field and provide some of the training that's needed, I do that, as well as just keep up with the job sites, training records, and make sure everybody's staying on the plus side, not deficient in anything, helping them keep up with that. Um, I'm married, been married for 30 years. My wife and I have a daughter who is 11, and that's the reason I get up every morning and do what I do is take care of my wife and family. It's the most important thing to me. But yeah, I'm having a good time. I've been with Performance for nearly 10 years now. I started in the fall of 2014, and
Wow.
so they've been really good to me, and I appreciate all they've done for me.
I got you. Yeah, I see you wearing that badge on that shirt. Yeah, shining. I hear you. And the viewers, don't adjust your TV set or your computer. Definitely this time of the year, I sound a little destructed. I've got some sinus congestion and things going on. It's been a wild flu season. It's crazy around South Mississippi right now, and I know you're from Alabama. What's the I don't know the situation like as far as the weather, the sinus? Is the flu season, the COVID hitting you guys pretty hard right now?
Oh yeah, both my wife and daughter over the past 2 or 3 weeks have dealt with flu-like symptoms. I
Mm.
don't think they were ever diagnosed, but flu-like symptoms.
Yeah, it's been terrible. Believe it or not. So just recently, I had the crud, and my entire family healthy as a horse. I don't understand it. Normally, I'm the one that's usually fighting off the sickness, and they're all sick. I don't know. Maybe with age comes a lower immune system. I don't know. Just a possibility. But um, kind of going back to where you from, where you grew up. Take me through all of that up until the point to where you joined the Navy.
Well, I grew up in Sand Hill, Mississippi, just
Mm,
outside of Richton. Um, I'm the oldest of three boys. Went to Greene County High School and graduated in 1991. So I'm aging myself a little
mm,
bit. I turned 50 this year.
right.
Um, but yeah, I had everybody in that area were related to, and everybody was kind of family and good experience. It was a different time, no internet, any of that stuff. So we grew up outdoors, grew up a lot of hunting, a lot of taking care of farm, fields and stuff. We didn't have a farm. We had a great big garden, but always hiring yourself out to haul hay or watermelons or doing all kinds of things to make a little extra cash and
That's right.
um, just pretty typical childhood for that area.
I got you. So back then, and none of us here are, geographical experts. I mean, Sandhill being such a small town, especially back then. So what's now I guess the elementary school was at the high school back then?
Oh yeah, until I was in eighth grade, it was kindergarten through 12th grade, all at the one school, and I was actually the part of the first class that went to Greene County High School that went all 4 years there,
Okay.
ninth through 12th grade, and so yeah, it was a big experience. I went from being in a class eighth graders that had 26 students, 27 students, to being with 130 maybe.
Wow.
So, which doesn't, if you grew up in a city like Baton Rouge or whatever, that's
Right.
still a small class. But for us, it was a big change. And then, of course, you took four schools that had kind of always been rivals and
Yeah.
put them together in one place. And so it was an interesting time. Everything was changing in the area, but great experience. No complaints about it. I had a, like I said, I grew fortunate to grow up in a good home. Both my mother and father there, and my dad was a construction worker. As a matter of fact, he started pipe fitting when I was in eighth grade, and
Huh.
so it
Okay.
kind of changed our lives. He had always done things like uh, carpentry or working in timber, or he was a heavy equipment operator, ran dozers and
Mhm.
backhoes and things like that. All very seasonal kind of work though, so when you got wet and cold and work tended to slow down.
Yeah.
So we got the opportunity to go into construction
Mhm.
and really turned our lives around as far as being able to provide and take care of us. Not that we were uh, poverty level or anything
Right.
before,
Right.
but it was a real blessing for our family. So from
Yeah.
from that stage, I had a good indication of what a career in construction, how it could change your life.
For sure. So your brothers, so Castor and Ross, both of those wound up getting into construction early on, right? I think Ross actually moved on to something else, but Castor's still in construction.
Yeah, he's actually works as a pipe superintendent for Performance.
Yep.
My younger brother Ross has worked for Performance. Now he does maintenance on land rigs, oil rigs, and stuff
Okay.
in the local area there, primarily so that he can stay at home with his
That's right.
children and take care of his family there.
That that's one of the cons, or not necessarily a con, just kind of something that goes along with the territory. 9 times out of 10, if you're going to work construction, whether it's commercial or industrial, there is quite a bit of travel that's involved with it. And especially when you're living in a state or a community that doesn't necessarily have a big industrial presence, you you're not gonna have many options to go make a decent living,
Right.
right? So, we have to hit the roads. It's either that or you're gonna try to provide a living in the what we call the log woods, right?
Mhm.
Logging, or, you're gonna try to get into the oil field and work offshore. I mean, there's not very many options as if you were living in Baton Rouge, New Orleans, Jackson, Mississippi, where you can actually get into a business or some type of private sector and start your own thing. There's not that many options for us in a small town.
Yeah, that's true, and probably even more so back then in the early '90s. Which is one of the big reasons I decided to join the military. It was um, I, and this is nothing negative against the area or the people there. I grew up with them. I love them, and I still consider it my home. But I looked around and I saw what my dad was doing in construction. He was gone for months at a time, and kind of had the idea that I wanted a different life. I didn't
Mm,
want to have to drive 100 miles each way to work if I could find something even within that range. And so one of the things an opportunity was presented to me to join the Navy, and I took it and saw it as a way of getting out and seeing the world and maybe learning a trade I could use. And
absolutely.
you know,
Yeah.
at that point, I decided I had the opportunity to go to college. I had scored well enough on my ACT. I could have went to college for on a scholarship, but just so happened that at that time when I was in my senior year, the build up for Desert Storm
Mm,
started, and so a whole lot of us in that age group that year enlisted. They had a real heavy influx of people volunteering to join the military, and I was one of those.
okay. I don't want to get too ahead of myself here, but you know, kind of going back again. What was it that one sole purpose or reason that you decided to join the Navy? Maybe it's not so much, as to why you didn't join the Army or the Air Force. What was it that pinpointed uh, the Navy as your primary?
Uh, Quite honestly, this is not gonna be the, patriotic feel-good answer, but it was all about the money.
So the Navy. So back then, which I say back then as if it's been 100 years. I know when I enlisted, they offered me this nice bonus. Is that what you're referring to? Did they offer you a nice bonus, or was the Navy just paying better?
No, it was I mean, the rate for an E3 is the same regardless of which service you serve in, so it wasn't the ongoing pay, but, I scored well enough on my ASVAB that I got the opportunity to test to go into a nuclear power program in the Navy.
Okay.
So they did give, they promised you re-enlistment bonuses for that, but I also was able to go into the military as an E3,
Okay.
so I
Oh
didn't have
wow.
to start at the bottom. Um, and it was kind of a, prestige thing, they were like, "This is the hardest thing to get into in the military," versus, except for maybe one of the, special forces thing, it's a really prestigious place to be because you're actually running nuclear reactors and
Okay.
maintaining nuclear reactors and
Gotcha.
stuff. So that appealed to me. Thought maybe there'd be a career in that after I got out, and so and keep in mind, I had just turned 17 in September, and in December I enlisted. I had to get my parents to sign for me so that I could actually
Mm,
enlist in the Navy. So I was
okay.
a young kid trying to make decisions about the future when you don't
Mhm.
necessarily have all the best information,
Right.
but you're doing the best you can with what you have.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, I know you and I were talking previously, John. If you will, pull that photo up. So this photo that we're about to pull up of you getting, I think it's the one where it's you and your wife. Uh, Actually, you and your uniform. Yeah. So assuming you at this point you had already joined the Navy, so go back and tell me a little bit about, what this picture represents, what's going on in this picture. Of course, it's your wife now, but go ahead and give me some details.
Well, I am the exception to the rule, I guess, in that everybody talks about growing up and marrying their high school sweetheart,
Mhm.
and and then figuring out later that wasn't the right choice,
Right.
and they not very many of them survive anymore. But my wife and I were just kids when we started dating, and I joined the Navy, and 2 years later, we got married as soon as she graduated high
Oh
school.
wow.
So that picture is taken 9 days after I turned 20, and she was just barely 18, and we got married in 1993, and so I came home on leave. It was we had decided a month earlier to get married, so, not time to do a whole lot of planning and everything, so we
Right.
just, I got married in my uniform, and, my best man came with me from the base. It worked out great. He was getting transferred to the, air station in Meridian
Okay.
at the same time, so he came with me, stood with me in his uniform, and, we had a small, wedding, and, that's the pictures there from it.
That's super cool. You guys look happy.
Oh, we were and are. We just celebrated our 30th wedding anniversary in September. So,
Wow.
30 years, I wouldn't do anything different.
That's awesome. A lot of us, and I don't include myself in this, but a lot of people can't say that, especially military veterans. We struggle, especially after getting out of the service at committing to anything, right? And my feelings toward that are this: we commit our life and almost our soul to a purpose. And then it's kind of like the military breaks up with you, or you break up with the military. It's hard to trust anything after that, in my experience. And I'm sure I'm not the only one that feels that way. And that's one of the, I say this on every episode. It's one of the reasons why we do this, right? So we can help people identify that they're not the only one struggling with what's going on. All right, so Casey, tell me a little bit about you getting into the Navy, your rating, where you did your boot camp, what kind of determined what rating you were going to be into, and talk to me a little bit about your naval career.
All right. Well, a month after I graduated high school, I was on a bus and then an airplane going to Orlando, Florida for boot camp. So
Right.
at the time, they had a recruit training center there, and it's where all the people who were going into the nuclear um, studies were going, and as well as it was the only training center at the time that allowed women to be trained there. So
Okay.
um, I went there, and it was July 1st, so it's
Mm,
crazy hot and humid, and for the next 4 weeks, you could pretty much um, set your clock by the rain showers.
oh
Every
yeah.
every day at 4 o'clock, it's going to come a thunderstorm, and at 5 o'clock, it's going to stop, and it's just
Right.
muggy. And um, so I went there, and you know, again, I'm 17 years old, and it is the first time I've ever spent that much time away from home.
Mm,
Whole different, and I grew up very conservative. I would say pretty sheltered,
right.
and so it was a completely different environment for sure. But you know, definitely not as physical as say a Marine Corps boot camp or Army boot camp. I mean, we did PT and that kind of stuff, but it was a lot of classroom work, and then the PT is I don't want to understate it, but it wasn't crazy difficult. I did lose 30 pounds in that 8
Oh
weeks,
wow. Okay.
so I was already a big guy,
Yeah,
and they ran it off of me. So
I got you.
um, after boot camp, I went to A school, and if you're in the nuclear industry or the in nuclear field, you had three choices at the time. You could either be electronics tech, an electrician's mate, or a machinist mate. So machinist mate would do, the welding, the fitting, that kind of stuff. Electricians obviously did electrical stuff,
Right.
and the electronics techs actually drove the reactors. And so that's what I had got selected to do, was go and be an electronics tech. So it was the longest of the schools,
Mm,
and I spent 6 months just learning to be an electronics tech, learning basic electronics, that kind of stuff. Um, and then after that, you went to nuclear power school.
uh-huh.
And I did not complete nuclear power school. I got into it, and just quite honestly, like I said, I'm a young kid out of home for the first time, and they put me in Orlando, Florida,
Oh yeah.
with a steady paycheck, and that close to Cocoa Beach and Daytona Beach. And the last thing I wanted to
Yep.
do was study nuclear physics all day.
Yeah.
So,
Teenagers will be teenagers,
yeah,
right?
I probably had I been a little more mature, it would have worked out different.
Right.
But I decided that nuclear power was not the way I wanted to go. I wanted to get out, go into the fleet, and do something different. And
Oh wow.
so
So
I
you had that option?
no, not well, you always have that option if you just don't do the work, right?
Well, yeah. That what is it? Failure to comply or failure to adapt or something like that.
So I ended up getting out of nuclear power, and they had to place me in something else. My thinking at the time, again, I'm an immature
Hmm.
kid. Well, I finished A school. They'll let me go be an electronics tech somewhere. Um, at the time, the Navy was, you know, had a lot of people in it, and they were actually about to begin uh, giving people early retirements and that kind of things, kind of trying to man down the military. So they decided they had too many electronics techs already.
What year is this?
This was 92.
So
I went in
right
91
around Desert Storm, Desert Shield.
after.
Right. Right. All right. So post.
Yeah, this is post the big buildup. They had already withdrawn.
Gotcha. Okay.
Um, Clinton's about to come into office.
Okay.
And so anyway, that we were they had a big influx of people come in prior to and during Desert Storm, and so now, like a lot of the ratings, especially the more popular ones, were overmanned,
Okay.
and they decided they didn't need any electronics techs,
Mm,
even though I'd already been trained for that, and so they decided to make me an aviation structural mechanic with an emphasis in hydraulics.
So, all right, this is something that I struggle with, and this is going to be so lame because everybody knows that the Navy has airplanes, and why, in your opinion, and I hate to get off into weeds, but maybe somebody else out there has the same question. So we have a Navy that's responsible for the water. We
Yes.
have an Air Force that's responsible for the air. We have the Marines and the Army who's responsible for ground, and Marines is ground and water. Why does the Navy have anything to do with the air?
Uh, Strictly about being able to be mobile. I mean, it takes a lot longer to set up an Air Force base somewhere than it takes to get an aircraft carrier anywhere in the world.
Mm,
So anywhere in the world, you can have an airport out in the ocean. So
okay.
it's just strictly about being able to take uh, your aviation side and put it anywhere you want it around the world in much quicker time.
Okay. Well, that definitely answered my question. That's that's a pretty reasonable answer. So again, not to get off into weeds, in one of the more upcoming episodes that we have coming up, I've actually got Steve Shep. He's going to be joining the podcast. He was actually a captain on an aircraft carrier.
Oh wow!
So I'm really looking forward to having him come in and join us here for the podcast. So definitely stay tuned for that. But back to our primary. All right. So now I guess the Navy decided that you were going to be an airplane
Yeah, they
technician.
gave me a very limited list of choices I could make based on what they
Mhm.
needed at the time, and so it was AMH, it was um, AMS, which is a structural side, and then just a few other little things.
So AMH and AMS, what kind of give me some details? What does that mean?
AMH is, like I said before, aviation structural mechanic
Okay.
hydraulics. AMS is aviation structural mechanic structures. So
Okay.
in theory, your one's going to be more emphasis on taking care of the plane itself, the
Gotcha.
structure of the plane, doing maintenance on that,
Okay.
and the H is going to be more flight controls,
Right.
hydraulics, those kind of things.
Okay.
In reality, they work in the same shop. They work in an airframes shop, and so everybody does everything.
Right.
I actually, in my career, did a whole lot more structural repairs and stuff than we did hydraulics because when you're in the fleet and you're on sea duty, it's not like you're going to take out hydraulic piston and rebuild it and put it back together. You're simply going to grab it out, throw a new one in, send that one off to
Okay.
somebody else to be fixed because it's all about speed, being
Right.
able to keep that bird flying.
That's right.
So it's you know, not a lot of actual hydraulics work so much as
Sure.
just pull and replace. And
Sure.
so I ended up doing a lot more structural work, but you work out of the same shop, airframe shop, and yeah, it was good learning experience. Not particularly what I wanted to be doing,
Right.
but given the choice of some of the other things on there, um, and again, I'm from that generation where I was a kid when the Top Gun movie came out,
Mhm.
and so you know, thought aviation would be the way I wanted to go if I was going to be in the Navy doing something besides electronics.
I got you.
So
Okay.
got sent from there to my first squadron, VO 41 Black Aces, and the thing is, they had already sent me to school to do electronics. They weren't going to send me to any more schools.
Right.
So here I am showing up as a petty officer third class, an E4, who's supposed to be pretty knowledgeable about the job he's doing. I have never seen an F-14 before.
Not so much.
So I show up, I don't know anything,
Right.
and I'm learning all my stuff through on-the-job training. And
Okay. So, and I know you and I have actually had this conversation previously, and I've been so proud to understand it. But the F-14E, the E, the echo after F-14, I know there's always a letter, or not always, but sometimes there's a letter behind like a F-14 something or F-16 something. What does that letter after the number represent?
it's the model. The very first F-14s were the F-14 Alphas. Uh, Once they updated them, I think they changed engine manufacturers and put out the F-14 Bravos.
Right.
So each one is just a different model that they would do upgrades and stuff.
Okay. And there's one of them is like a F-14
I think Delta
something
would,
but something describes it or details it as a fighter or something
that's the
as a
F.
bomber.
That's the F.
Okay, so F means it's a fighter.
Yes.
And
F,
B means it's a bomber.
Yep.
So B-52, bomber 52 would
Right.
be the model. Okay.
They changed the designation from bomber to attack. So you had the A-16, A-36. They were all attack planes, bombers.
So like the A-10, the Warthog, attack 10. Okay.
Yep.
All right.
FA means it's a plane that's outfitted to do both. It can both defend itself and
Okay.
so most of your fighters are there strictly to support and defend the attack planes while they're en route in mission. So for many other
Understood.
fighters, but if you've got an FA plane, you're able to defend yourself and
Okay.
drop bombs.
All right. So you're in the Navy. You're I guess you're on an aircraft carrier.
Yes.
Right.
Well,
So
as part of a squadron, we're attached to an aircraft carrier, but we don't actually. We're not part of the carrier crew.
okay.
So we're our own separate squadron. So when we're in port, we're actually at the Naval Air Station Oceana, which is in Virginia Beach, and our boat is in Norfolk. So we didn't live on the boat or anything except when we were underway. So
Gotcha.
there's a separation really between the aviation guys and the uh, ship's crew.
Okay. So while you were out there, though, did you ever actually, you know, have to serve with while any SEALs were on your ship or around there? Did you ever get to meet any of them or anything?
Oh yeah, we'd meet the SEALs. They'd be on the boat. They'd be down in the hangar bay doing PT and,
Oh, wow.
and doing all that kind of stuff. The general idea that you would find from the movies or something is these SEALs are big, muscled up,
Yep.
guys, and then you meet them, and it's this kid who's 5'8" and maybe weighs 170 pounds, 160 pounds. He's not very big at all. That was kind of interesting to me because, like I said, I've always been a big guy. Just to see this guy who has this reputation for being the toughest, baddest
Yeah.
guys in the
Yeah.
world, and just they didn't physically meet the expectation that you thought
Right.
you were going to see.
Yeah.
Not taking anything away from them, they're bad dudes, but yeah, they were there and interacted with us. You could go down if you wanted to do PT with them; they'd let you do PT with them
Oh, wow.
and do all that kind of stuff.
So you got to actually do PT with SEALs. Did you partake in that?
No,
No.
no,
No.
no, no. I was more interested in you know other things than PT. I did in the Navy. Again, it's different, and I'm not sure what it's like now. I'm going on information that's 25 to 30 years old, right?
Right.
But
Right.
at the time, after boot camp and your schools and stuff, we did PT twice a year to test and prove we could still do it.
Right. And I've seen different like TV shows and movies where they're running laps
Yeah.
around. So that really doesn't happen.
Oh yeah, on a voluntary basis. It's not like the whole squadron got
So they don't
out in
have
the
you out in
morning.
formation on the hangar or the flight deck, and then they're like, all right, double time, and you start running laps. They don't do that.
No, no.
Wow.
They didn't then. Things may have changed since then, but no, we didn't do. After training, you were just expected to keep yourself in shape to meet the requirements.
Oh wow. They definitely have trust in you guys because I know the Marine Corps and the Army they're gonna make you're gonna get in formation in the morning and you're gonna do PT and there's gonna be an NCOIC leading you or some commission guy.
The only time that we did that was if you failed to meet the requirements. They'd put you like on a probation,
Yeah.
and then they would make you go to PT in the morning
Oh
or
wow.
evening or whatever. But yeah, as long as you met the requirements, yeah, it was up to you to keep yourself in shape.
So all right, throughout your military career, if you could kind of pinpoint one of the coolest moments and kind of you know turn it into a story to tell us while you were, in the Navy, one of the coolest stories you could possibly think of. Go ahead and describe that.
had moved from VF 41 to VF 102,
Mhm.
and no, I was still in 41. My mistake. And we were doing workups, getting ready for a cruise. So workups, the way a cruise works, um, you have to pilots have to qualify, the ship has to qualify, all that
Mhm.
before you actually go for a 6-month deployment. So you may pull out for a period for 2 weeks, and you're going to go somewhere, and all the pilots are going to qualify on making their deck landings or whatever, uh, things that the boat has to do.
Mhm.
And you do that for a period of months. So you'll go out for 2 weeks, then you'll come back, you'll go out for a month, you'll come back maybe month and a half. So during one of those workups, we actually went down to the Virgin Islands, and we were going to go from do whatever quals we had to do there, and then go from the Virgin Islands to New York City for Fleet Week, which is always a big deal every year. And I had not recently gotten married, and so I had been gone from home for about a month
Mhm.
without seeing my wife. And on the way toward New York, uh, one of our jets had a some kind of maintenance problem and decided it wasn't safe to come back and land on the carrier. Just so happened we were close enough to our home base. He was able to land at our station there at Oceana,
Mhm.
and so the chief came into the office and said they needed somebody from the airframe shop to volunteer to go home instead of going to Fleet Week so that they could do maintenance on that plane. Well, again, I hadn't seen my wife in a while, so I said, yes, I'd love to do that.
Okay.
So that meant I got to take off of the aircraft carrier in a C2 Greyhound, which is the biggest plane they let land on an aircraft carrier. It's what all the we call them CODs, carrier onboard delivery. So it's what all new personnel come out on. That's what they bring the mail on. Um, so I got in and got to be launched off by the
Oh, wow.
catapult, and crazy experience. The passengers in the C2 were facing backwards, and so the pilot came on and he says, "All right, everybody, cross your arms, grab your shoulder straps, and lean forward as far as you can." And thinking, why do I need to do that? Well, when that catapult took off, you couldn't have held yourself up if you wanted to. It was you go from 0 to 130 in 2 seconds,
Oh my god.
and it flings you off the boat. And then again, the C2 is not a jet; it's a prop plane. So when it went off the edge, it feels
Like you're going
like you're
down.
falling down.
Ugh.
And I mean, it's cooler than any roller coaster I've ever been on. But it was great experience. I always wanted to catch a wire and come back to the boat. I didn't get the chance to do that. But that launch was probably the coolest thing I did while I was in the Navy. It was the closest thing I got to feel like what it'd be to pilot a plane and come off one of those carriers.
Wow,
So
that's really cool.
yeah, it
That
was great.
that would be awesome. I can honestly say I've never the only military aircrafts that I've ever got to fly on, um, I like a C-130, which I'm sure you're familiar with, a C-2, which is just a C-130 on steroids, uh, Black Hawk, and a Chinook. So no, definitely nothing to do with an aircraft carrier or any kind of naval aircraft or even Air Force aircraft for that matter. Uh, so throughout your military career, was there a mentor or anything that kind of helped mold you into a better? I don't know if it's you referred to as sailor or seaman.
Airman
Air
in mine.
really
Yeah, because
in
I
the
was
Navy, there's airmen.
yeah,
Even the like
aviation
naval.
side.
Really,
Yeah.
I thought Air
Actually,
Force had airmen.
the Navy has seamen, airmen, and firemen. And firemen is not firefighters. Firemen are those people that um, deal with electricity, electricians,
Okay.
electronics, any of that stuff.
See, the Navy confuses me. That's the only branch that I don't understand actually the ranking structure. I'm very unfamiliar with that, but hey, that's why the Navy stands out amongst all the other branches, right? You guys are singular, specific to a lot. I'm not saying specific towards one thing. I mean, aircraft. watercraft, probably mobilized equipment. I mean, it's
Underwater craft.
yeah, yeah, submarines. So we had a guy on here not too long ago, Landon. He was actually a submariner.
Right.
You know, when he was responsible for like nuclear stuff that he couldn't talk about because it was like super top secrets, which was really, really cool. So
Mhm.
if you haven't watched that, definitely tune into that. That was a really nice episode. Um, so as far as like the mentorship, was there a person that helped mold you into a better airman?
There were some guys in my shop, and unfortunately, it wasn't like necessarily higher ranking guys. But
Mhm.
again, I mentioned to you that I didn't go to school for what I was actually doing. Um, so I had some buddies in the shop who really took me under their wing and showed me, what I needed to do, and um, set some bad examples for me too that I followed in. But um, yeah, I had a couple really close friends that kind of took me under their wing, and they were all E4s or E5s, and kind of showed me the ropes because I had never been in the fleet before, so it's a whole. I had spent a year basically in training of some sort, and so to get to the fleet and you have no idea what you're doing, uh, never been on a boat before, never seen an F-14 before, and they kind of took me in and showed me what I was doing.
Gotcha.
And I'm still friends with some of those guys today. Don't talk to them as much as I would like, but we keep in touch through Facebook and things like that.
Well, that's cool, and that's very important, especially once you're out. Because you guys kind of trust each other. You help each other when needed. So it's kind of like having somebody to rely on that you've known practically over half of your life.
Yeah, those. I don't think, and again, I don't have any wartime stories where
Right?
we came together and
Yeah.
life's threatened and that kind of thing. But even just the being in the military at all, I don't think civilians ever understand the kind of camaraderie
Right.
that you have with your military buddies. It
Yeah.
is a different friendship than any other. You have all experienced, the same things, and it just bonds you in a way.
Yeah.
I, my best friend in the Navy, I talked to him Sunday night. He called me about 9:30. We talked for a couple hours on Sunday night. It and that's from 30 years ago.
Wow.
So we still anytime I'm in his part of the country, I try to make a point to go by and have dinner with him or
Oh, that's
something.
cool, and that's awesome. That's definitely awesome. Um, so if you could like tell me a little bit about what was the most common issue that aircrafts have that you guys had to work on or fix. What would that have been? And then, how, I guess in the best way you can describe it, what was the solution?
I don't know if there
Duct
is.
tape. Duct tape.
Yeah, sometimes. No, there's no such thing as common. There is anything can happen at any time because with those planes, they're putting such forces
Mhm.
on those things all the time that stuff just tears up, right? I will tell you specifically about the F-14. We always had a running joke that if it wasn't leaking hydraulic fluid, it was empty,
That's right.
right?
We did the
So
same thing in the Army.
it those fittings were meant to be pressed together by some of those forces and stuff. So if it was sitting on the ground, not pressurized, it was leaking,
Yeah.
and so that was a constant thing. The biggest challenge in doing aircraft is what they call FOD, foreign object damage. Um, so that is your biggest concern. They actually discovered, I think during Vietnam, that we lost more planes to foreign object damage than we did to enemy fire.
Like foreign like what?
Something, something not where it's supposed to be, and either gets sucked in the engine, destroys the engine.
Like a bird.
Well, a bird, a rivet, a screw, a tool, or a tool being left in a bay where a mechanic's been working, and a wrench gets in there, and now he can't steer. He gets lodged in, and he can't steer his plane.
Oh man.
So before every launch, before every maintenance, everything, one of the things we did multiple times a day was what we called FOD walk down. So you would stand shoulder to shoulder, walk the whole flight line, make sure there wasn't a screw on the ground, there wasn't a rock on the ground. There, your toolbox is every tool has a specific place and it's outlined. And before you leave the shop, you and a supervisor look at your toolbox, make sure all the tools are there. When you come back in from your maintenance, you have to both sign off that all the tools are in their place, because that was the biggest concern, was that something could get left on the aircraft, or uh, and bring that plane down. There's nobody even firing at him.
How did you make your way to Performance?
Well, I'd got out of the Navy in '96. I think the first time I ever worked with Performance, I did a couple shutdowns with them in 2008.
Hmm.
And again, I had gotten out of the industry for a while. I had learned over the years how to do fiber optic
Hmm.
construction, and so I was putting up fiber optic cable on the side of the roads back in the early 2000s, when they had just deregulated some of that. So everybody was putting up more fiber optic cable. And so I made a good living doing that for a while. And then after a while, I actually went in, I did ministry for a while, went to full-time ministry and did that for about um, 8 years,
Okay.
7 years. And so I had been out of construction for quite a while, and then came and worked a couple shutdowns with Performance. Um, and then in 2014, I was living over near Atlanta in Villa Rica, Georgia, and just decided I needed a change. My wife and I had adopted my daughter,
Hmm.
um, and we were living completely away from our family. Our family was all over in Mississippi, and just decided that we wanted her to grow up knowing who her grandparents are, and knowing who her cousins were. We both grew up with big families, and interacting with our cousins, and that kind of thing. And so we wanted her to experience that. And so we decided to move back toward Mississippi. And I called and asked if Performance was hiring any pipe fitters. And that's how I got started in the fall of 2014 with Performance.
Okay, well, that's awesome. So you've actually sent us a picture of your wife and your daughter. Go ahead and tell me a little bit about this photo here.
Well, this was at Christmas time, obviously. The Christmas tree there in the back you can barely see. But we, yeah, we adopted Chelsea in 2000. Well, her adoption was final in 2013, but she came to live with us on December 12th of 2012. So 12/12/12
Okay,
was a
pretty easy number to remember.
was a big day for us. She was 7 months old, and we had decided to adopt, and we did it through foster care in
Okay,
Georgia. And so you have the option to say, hey, I'm only interested in children who you're putting up for adoption, that they're not going to be going back to their parents.
right.
And at the time, Chelsea was 7 months old, and she came to our house, and she's been with us ever since. She's been my daughter from day one, and even though the adoption wasn't final for nearly a year, but she's been my daughter since day one. And she some days I feel like she keeps me young. Some days I think she's making me old.
That's what kids do, man. That's just part of it.
But here I am at 50 years old with an 11-year-old, so
Right.
it's a great thing. And again, I have a great relationship with my wife.
Yep.
So we've wanted it for a long time. We were actually married for 19 years before we got Chelsea.
Oh,
So
wow.
it was a big change in our life. I can tell you, going from just being the two of you for 19 years to now there's a baby, and it changed our lives, flipped it upside down for
For
sure.
sure, man. Well, you definitely got a beautiful family, so congratulations on that. Um, you know, your story's really cool uh, for many, many reasons, and I think the Navy is a really, really special branch of our military. You heard the Navy holds a special purpose. And again, like we were talking previously, the spectrum is is wide of responsibilities that the Navy has, and the role that it plays in the country's success and the world's success. I mean, you know, people have called the United States, we're the world's police.
Yep.
We try to keep peace and we try to keep the world safe. And the Navy is a huge part of that. And you being a part of the Navy, that says a lot about you and the responsibility that you held for the Navy and your position. And did you kind of take that initiative and that responsibility with you into performance, and how did you use it to, I guess, work your way into environmental health and safety and now HR?
Well, I would be lying if I said that I got a lot of experience that translated from the military to construction as far as physically what I did as a
Right.
pipe fitter or anything. One of the things I will point to is the safety factor, right?
Mhm.
When you're working with planes and people's lives are dependent on you being safe, safety is a huge factor in
For
aviation.
sure. Yep.
And so that translates well into what we do,
Mhm.
right? Yeah, same thing. If you're working construction and you're not doing your job safely, somebody gets hurt, somebody dies, maybe multiple people,
Yeah.
right? So, um, always had the connection there. I think one of the biggest things that I got out of the military that helped me in construction was something we mentioned before, is the camaraderie aspect of it,
Yes.
right? I growing up where I did, um, everybody from miles around me looked like me, believed the same things I believed, talked the way I talked. It was very one dimensional. Great people, but it was one dimensional. You know, um, when I joined the military, um, it kind of broke some stereotypes for me. And not just racial, but from parts of the country. Those kind of
Right.
things.
Right.
It helped me to see that people are people,
Mhm.
and that we can bond and we can work to a common goal,
Yep.
and we can have each other's back. My best friend, and I mentioned earlier, we're probably one of the most unlikely. The thinking I grew up with, we're kind of the most unlikely group of friends you've ever seen.
Right.
I'm a Protestant holiness church growing up kid from South Mississippi. He's an Irish Catholic from upstate New York.
Oh dear. So
Yeah.
he's a mobster.
No,
Golly.
no, great guy, but he's it was if you had asked me before I had went in the Navy, I think my best friend would have ever been an Irish Catholic kid from New
Right.
York. I'd have been like, "Are you crazy?"
Yeah.
Uh, we bonded, man. It broke down a lot of stereotypes. You meet people from all over the world, different races, different areas, and just kind of helped me see we're all people.
Oh yeah. That's
You know?
that's really good. Not necessarily to be a try to judge somebody's character.
Oh yeah.
Get to know them. Right.
Yep.
Get to know who they are, what their background's like. You know, and I say this a lot. Let's get to know people and don't judge.
Yep.
Right. It's not our place.
Right.
If anything, be positive and help people. And that's what this is supposed to do. That's what this is for. And that you and I, we work really close together. We both share, an office in Mobile, Alabama, and we deal with each other quite regularly. It's just we're just now able to make it happen to where we could do the podcast with you. It's a big deal to me, and I know you know this, and I know it's a big deal to you too. What we're doing for our military veterans and what our purpose here is. For this podcast, for instance, excuse me. In your opinion, what are some of the biggest struggles that our veterans are having within the company? And you know, in your opinion, what do you think we could possibly do to help the struggle? Because it's a common saying now, the struggle's real, right? My wife says it all the time.
Mhm.
So, what do you think we could do as a society, not necessarily us as a company or us as individuals, but as a society, what do you think we could do to help the struggle of our veterans?
Be available. That's the first thing. You, regardless of who you are, people are built for community.
Yeah,
Nobody is built. Even though somebody would consider themselves an introvert and not necessarily a people person, there's something on the inside of us that craves community.
yeah,
We need to be a part of something. I think that's what appeals to a lot of people about the military. And then they get out, and what's been their community for however many
that's
years
right.
is now stripped away.
Yep,
And they're going back, even if they're going home, they're going back to people who don't understand necessarily the life they've been living for the last few years,
yep,
that kind of thing. People need to be open to reaching out
mhm,
because we're not necessarily great at putting ourselves out there all the time.
right.
So sometimes it takes somebody reaching out, inviting these vets in and saying, "Hey, we want you in this community. We want you to be part of us." So there's a sense of community there. Um, I think some of the fraternal organizations like American Legion, Veterans of Foreign Wars, places like that are great places for vets to get involved. They're not just social drinking clubs.
Yeah, and they're not a
You
lot of
know,
people have a misconception of them
yep,
being like an old folks home.
right.
It's not. It is not like that. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're right. It's a great place. I know the American Legion post that I'm part of. There in um, close to Dolphin Island, Post 250. It is they offer services like helping you get disabled veterans
Mhm.
benefits, things like that. They do um, care for the disabled vets in the area. They even if someone passes,
Mhm.
they have a corps there that goes and does the flag ceremony and everything for them. So places to be involved can like that can provide a sense of community for our vets.
Gotcha.
Um, I think churches and
Mhm.
organizations need to make it part of their mission to reach out to these people and say, hey, uh, no matter uh, what's happened in the past or whatever, we care about you. We want to be a safe place for you to come and share in life with us, and we're here for you if you need to talk or if you just
Mhm.
want to sit here and be with us.
Yeah.
We're here for that. Um, I think those things are important. I think as a company, we're we need to get all of our employees who are not veterans um, interested in understanding that these guys we may be hiring. They're coming straight. If they come straight out of the military, they may not be the most skilled person we have yet. They're learning. Um, they're trying to transition their life.
Mhm.
Let there be some understanding for that, and make sure that we're taking the time, not just vets, but everybody, to mentor them and to help them get as far in their skill or craft as they want to be. But especially with our vets, we need to make a special effort to see those guys come
Absolutely.
in and learn a new skill. Because, like I said, I worked on planes. I knew
Mhm.
nothing about pipe fitting when I come into construction.
Right.
Um, I
You
would,
knew how to work with your hands. I mean, it definitely
yeah,
helps you there.
yeah, but I knew nothing about pipe,
Right.
anything like that. So, fact that I was fortunate had my dad to mentor me in that. Not everybody has that opportunity,
Right.
and we need to be that for somebody. And then just knowing, guys, your veteran friends that come back don't want to make it sound like everybody that come back has some kind of great trauma they're trying to overcome or anything
Absolutely.
like that, right? But we do need to be the ones who are checking up on them.
Yep. Absolutely.
How's it going? How's this transition going for you? How's your job search going?
Mhm.
All those things. Just being aware and involved makes a world of difference.
Absolutely. So that's really good. You said all that. It kind of probably answered the question that I'm about to ask you. But if you could put a message out to our viewers, military, veterans, active duty, civilian, uh, any message at all, you know, what message would that be? Whether it be about the company or the world or whatever, if you had a message to put out, what would it be?
Love God, love other people.
That's pretty straightforward, right?
I think that's best advice we can have. I know that not everybody is a person of faith, uh, but I do believe that is one of the, uh, well, in my opinion, the um, best thing that we could have is just knowing that there's. You talk a lot about hope on this podcast. I've heard you several times. Um, you know, our faith in God is what provides us hope. That something better is coming. That this is not all just meaningless. It's part of a plan. All that gives me hope. Even in when I don't understand the plan, which as a military member we never understand the plan. Somebody above us is making decisions, and we're just a cog in the wheel, making it happen. Uh, I don't necessarily have to understand the plan to get it accomplished,
Yeah,
right? To do my part. I think faith is the same way. Faith is an important part of our life,
for sure.
and it's even though I don't understand the plan fully, I trust in the commanding officer,
There you go.
right? And I know that I can have hope in him that he's got a good plan, and I just do my part.
That's
Um,
awesome. That's a great point. Everybody's going to have their opinion, and then their faith or their belief system. But I appreciate you coming on here and voicing yours. That means a lot. And in closing, I want to thank you for coming out. Dedicating, devoting your time to this purpose, this podcast. Uh, you and John, the guy behind the camera. I want to thank you for allowing us to do this, and then the company Performance, allowing us and giving us everything that we need to make this dream come true. Um, I want to say this before we close. Again, thank you, Casey, for coming out. It means a lot. Um, but to all of our veterans and civilians, even watching, you know, we don't know what tomorrow brings. We don't know what people are going through, what people are dealing with. Chances are you've got a military veteran somewhere around you at some point in time. You don't know what he or she has went through, and you don't know what's on their mind right now. Let's treat people like we want to be treated. You know, get to know these men and women. Find out what their mental status is. Are they stable at all? What we need to do as a society is talk to people,
right.
get to know them. And we need to talk to other people should these people need something. We need to voice our status. Are you physically and mentally fit to do what you're doing, especially in this industry?
Right.
Our for instance, our supervisors that are out in the field, you're pushing your men and women to get a job done. Are these individuals where they need to be mentally? For a long time, I wasn't, so I can understand a certain level of that stress. So let's get to know our men and women who have served. Let's get to know the men and women who didn't. That way we can maintain, one of the best safety records in the country, in the world, as a company. Again, Casey, I know I'm beating a dead horse. I want to thank you. And
Thank you for having me.
absolutely, it means a lot. And John, thank you for doing this. And thank you as a viewer for tuning in and being a part of the mission here. It goes without saying, without you all, it's definitely not possible. And here's for hope for a better today and hope for a better tomorrow. And this is Mike Favre signing off.